Let's get into today's main topic, right? Today's main topic's really cool. I was actually with one of my good friend's two daughters, right? And I'm just hanging out with them, like 14 and 16 years old. I was just like being an uncle, right? And they gave me this really, really interesting comment, like very interesting comment. And the comment, because we were talking about Adam and Eve, and we were talking about the Bible and certain things, and they made one of them, the 14-year-old made this comment. And the comment they gave me, they said is like, oh, so I was reading the Bible and it said that Adam and Eve were naked and then later God gave them clothes. So is that when we got clothes? It's a very interesting question. 6,000 years ago, right? 6,000 years ago, what happened? It's true. Because if you look at Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, what does it say? It says that, excuse me, Adam and Eve were created and they were naked and they had no shame. That's Genesis 2:25. Now, Genesis chapter 3, verse 21, what does that say? Well, after the fall is committed, what does God do for them? God gives them animal skins as clothes. So they were innocently saying to me like, oh, so what happened? Does that mean that they were, that no one ever wore clothes until God gave them animal skins? And I would say that the one thing, I'm going to answer this more symbolically, all right? There's a lot of arguments out there, were Adam and Eve the first or not? And I have a video on that. Or it's going to be, is this a physical story or a spiritual story, or what parts of it are symbolic? I'm not going to get into those types of things, but I'm going to tell you why they were naked at first and why God gave them animal skins to wear after they committed the fall. And it doesn't have to do with clothing itself is like, oh, guess what? You're hot when you're with God, and then when you leave God, you're cold, so I'm gonna give you some clothes to wear. See, it had nothing to do with that. What is the symbolism behind this? Why did they get clothes? Why did God give them animal skins? Why were they naked before? Even though they're living in Israel, and what's happening in Israel? Israel is a place that has winter. Israel gets cold. Sometimes it snows. It rains. So why wouldn't they wear clothes anyways? So we're going to go into the symbolic meaning of why they were naked and why God gave them animal skins as clothes. Okay? So the first thing we do need to know is the Bible is chock full of symbolism, parables, and allegories. Right? Even Jesus himself, take a look at Matthew chapter 13, verse 34 and 35. Now 34, what does 34 say? 34 says, Jesus spoke all these things to the crowds in parables. He did not say anything without using a parable. So we know one thing is Jesus spoke to the crowds only using parables. That is something that is clear in the Bible. Okay, when he spoke to the crowds, it was through parables. Now, verse 35 is very interesting because it has to do with a prophecy that Jesus had to fulfill. And it says, I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. Now, what part am I going to focus on here? The prophecy about Jesus, number one, is he's going to speak in parables. So there's the first prophecy. But look at the second prophecy. Second prophecy is very interesting. It says, through these parables, he will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. What does that mean? It means that when Jesus spoke, or in these parables, even things that have been hidden since the creation, things have been hidden since the creation of the world. Well, when's the creation of the world? Creation of the world is Genesis chapter 1. So we know that many things have been hidden through parables. Okay? So let's go one step further into this. So now that we know that there's allegories, parables, symbolism that's all made by God throughout the Bible, let's go to the next thing, right? So we're getting into a story where it's about clothing. So let's take a look at what the Bible says. What does clothing symbolize, spiritually speaking? So what you wear, what does it actually mean? And I'm going to show you another Bible verse for this too. So if in the Bible, what does God use as a symbol of clothing? Like, what does it actually symbolize? Look at Revelations chapter 19, verse 8. And Revelation chapter 19, verse 8 says what? It says, fine linen, clean and bright, symbolizes righteous actions of God's holy people, right? If you look at Revelation 19:8, it says, fine linen, bright and clean, was given her to wear. Fine linen stands for the righteous acts of God's holy people. So what do we see? In the Bible, clothing can be seen as something like the actions that you take. So if you have bright and clean clothing, that is more righteous actions. And let's pretend you had dirty and tattered clothes, that would be more wicked or evil actions. So when you look at clothing, it shows you what type of actions you have. And I'm going to say something else about clothing too. Clothing also shows your job, your mission, like the things that you actually do. Now, what does that mean? Well, for instance, policemen. A policeman wears a uniform, right? A policeman's uniform. Firefighters wear firefighters' uniform. Whatever job that whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a dentist, whatever jobs we have, there's certain clothes we wear to show that we are in that position, right? Which means that a policeman should be taking actions like a policeman, and that is something that we have to recognize. So you can kind of tell who someone is by the clothes they wear, okay? So how does this tie into why they were naked and why God gave them animal skins as clothes? All right. So the symbolism, the skins that you wear, when we take it to the fundamentally who we are, to be naked or to wear the skin of a human being, what does that mean? It means that for them to be naked, it means that they were human. And you're like, duh, of course it means that you're human. And we're not talking about just physically human itself. It means that they were complete human beings, right? The skin of a human means that they were human. So let's get deeper into this. So Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, Adam and Eve were created, and then God breathed life into them, and they were connected to God and lived with him in the Garden of Eden. They were naked, wearing the skins of human beings, okay? So they're wearing the clothes of humans. So what is a human? Well, look at the scriptures. The scriptures in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 23 tells us that human beings are made of three distinct parts. It is the body, the soul, and the spirit. So here's a human being, body, soul, and spirit, okay? The body, we see this, you can see my body right now. The soul you can't see, but it has to do more with my mind, my heart, and my thoughts. And of course, we have finally the spirit, what eventually lives forever in the spiritual world, whether it's in heaven or hell, okay? So, the thing that we have to understand is, well, what makes a human being? Well, what can we compare human beings to? Let's compare human beings to something else in this world like animals. What is a fundamental difference between humans and animals, okay? The fundamental difference between humans and animals is going to be the very reason why God chooses to save human beings and not animals and not trees and not rocks. Only one thing: body, soul, and spirit. And what is that one part of us that connects to God? What is the one part of us that after we die will live forever with God in heaven? And what is that? It's the spirit. How do I know? Well, look at what the Bible says. In John chapter 4, verse 24, it says, God is spirit, so his worshipers must worship in spirit and truth. Because God is spirit and he's not a body, this is why we can't touch him. We can't hold his arms. We can't hug him. We can't kiss him. We can't see him, right? So many things we can't see about God because he's spirit. So what does God connect to? God connects with our spirit. And even after we die, what is God going to be communicating and interacting with? Our spirits. The spirit is what is the greatest difference between us and all of creation. Creation has all of their blessings. One time someone asked me like, well, God created human beings as the best creation, but what's so great about human beings? We don't live the longest. We don't live longer than trees or rocks or mountains. We're not the fastest. The cheetah's faster. The bear is faster. So many of these animals are faster than us. We're not, we're not the tallest. Look at the trees out. There's so many things that are taller, faster, bigger, stronger. We're not even the strongest. So what's so great about human beings? And God said the biggest difference is human beings will live forever because we have spirit. Animals have a body and a soul, but they don't have a spirit. Because of our spirits, this is why God reaches out to us. God created us with the Spirit so that we can connect and have a relationship with Him. That's the biggest difference. We have a spirit and animals don't. So let's go one step further. So what happens in the story of Adam and Eve? They eventually commit the fall. And after they commit the fall, what happens? Well, we know in Genesis 2:17, the result of the fall is death itself, right? If you eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, what's going to happen to you? You will, dramatic pause, and wiping my nose, you will surely die, right? So it says you will surely die. And of course, we have another video on this in the past, but when we check out what is the actual death that happened at the time of Adam and Eve, well, we'll look at other verses, for instance, like Revelation chapter 20, verse 14, that talks about a second death. And you have Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 7, that, once your body dies, your spirit goes back to God who made it, right? So we see that it's the spirit. Like, the spirit is the most important part because it lives forever. Right? If the body was the most important part, the body would live forever, but it's the spirit. The spirit goes to heaven, the spirit goes to hell, the body just dies here on the earth. So at the time of Adam and Eve, they commit the fall. And how did they die? They died spiritually. What does that mean? They disconnected from God. Their relationship was absolutely broken. And because of this, what does that mean? Well, let's get deep into this and get to the answer. Before the fall, God reached out to them. They reached out to God. Their spirit was living. They had a relationship with God. They were connected to God. They were fully human, and that's why they were naked, in human skin. But after they committed the fall, what happened? Well, the relationship with God was cut, which means the spirit died. Now, if your spirit is dead, what's remaining? Only your body and soul. Just like who else? Just like animals. And God said, here, have animal skins. Why? That's what you are now. Since you disconnected from God, you are nothing more than an animal because your spirit is dead. And if you really look at the world today, the people that don't believe in God, we kind of live like animals. Just living, just eating, mating, right? Taking care of your family, doing something for your society, and then you die. This is the same thing animals do just to survive, just to live a little longer to the next generation, the next generation. That's what animals do. And this is why a lot of people are struggling and trying to figure out, how am I supposed to really live my life? They only get into emptiness and meaninglessness. And what we have to realize is it all stemmed from the fall. And it broke the spirit and we became like animals. And God said, here, wear this because that is what you are. And that is the symbolism of God giving us the animal skins and being naked before. Before wearing human skins, they were complete humans, body, soul, and spirit. After the fall, the spirit dies and God says, this is what you are now. And this is why there was a need, a necessity for the Messiah to come to save people's spirits so that they can be once again wearing human skins. Okay?